Hey, what's going on, guys? Fizz here once again. So I know it has been a very long time since I've last uploaded a video. Basically, stuff happened, like WoW Classic came out. I started playing a lot of Classic Wrath and stuff like that, and I don't know, I burned out of PoE really hard. There's been so many leagues back to back that were just like a lot of non-changes, or the same but worse is like a lot of the sentiment that like a lot of people shared, and I kind of felt that in a lot of ways. I kind of did what I set out to do. But prior to the league coming out, I said, Sunder looks really fun. Past that, I'm not really sure. And then that ended up exactly what happened. I had a bunch of fun with Sunder, and then once I was done with that, I tried looking around for other stuff that kind of was interested in. I just couldn't. It didn't feel good. The minion changes, I wanted to do a few minion builds, but the minion changes felt so bad that it just kind of killed my will to like try to make those work. I just wasn't having fun with stuff constantly dying in maps. So yeah, anyway, that's I disappeared. That's where I was. I didn't really go anywhere. Just wasn't really playing much PoE, and there was some content I could have made like on the reveals and the manifestos, but I feel like I didn't have anything really to add to the conversation. There was a lot of stuff that I pretty much just felt the same as a lot of people felt, other content creators you guys probably watch, and I was like, yeah, I'll just wait until I've more to say. So all in all, 3.20, this is basically just a video of my impressions of 3.20 after the reveal, sitting on it for a day or two and just kind of like thinking about stuff. I have a few preliminary POBs I've already got ready to make videos on as well, for potential league starters. My plan going into 3.20 is very similar to my plan going to 3.19, because there weren't any real meta changes or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use it as a league to just meme around, have fun, try to do a bunch of like weird builds and fun builds that are definitely not going to be the best, but will hopefully be fun, and I can like kind of showcase some really maybe cool or just quirky or fun things in like a HSF environment, and then people can play that in like software trade or whatever you guys play, and then have more fun with it because it'll just be stronger. But yeah, that's my plan, is to just play whatever and have fun with it, and not like really worry about like try not to worry too much about the strength of things, even though the state of crafting is a little bit worrisome. So there are a few big winners with 3.20. So I'll get into the thing I care about most to begin with. New skills. We are getting 2 new skills. We are getting Frozen Legion and a new slam, funnily enough, with Volcanic Fissure. So I actually, if you've watched the channel for a while, I was very confident. I said it's not likely that slams will ever see like a heyday ever again. When they were meta, they were still incredibly unpopular. Even it was very obviously like the strongest build in the game. Even for a lot of like HCSF races and gauntlets, people were opting to play other skills over slams, even when slams were absolutely the best build in the game. And that's kind of like unprecedented in a lot of ways, just because of how unpopular slams were, even with like top racers. It was just universally very much disliked in software trade. Even given their strength, it was very, very unpopular, and there was always a lot of outcry around them. So I was always very confident with my like prediction that we would never really see a lot of buffs aimed at slam specifically, even if they're not in like a super good spot. They're in a very bad spot actually. But I just didn't think GG would ever address it, because there's a lot of stuff that GG doesn't address that people really want them to address. So something that's a little bit more divisive, I would imagine, wouldn't get any attention. Though when I saw that they're adding a new slam to the game, I was like, oh, does this mean like Seismic Cry is going to get some type of like, some type of buff or some type of, recompense for like what happened to it in 3.15? So I got my hopes up a little bit during the reveal, and then, patch notes came out. Nope, no such thing. Seismic is still just cosmetic cry for a lot of things. Maybe not potentially for the new slam. It really depends on how the mechanics for that work, but I'll get into that in the Volcanic Fissure video that I'll be uploading probably sometime after this video, but I'm going to record them all tonight. The new skills, you have Volcanic Fissure, which is a slam skill. It's basically Molten Strike, but a slam and its range. So actually this is interesting, and you may think like, well, that's boring. Not necessarily, because one of the weirdest things about like Molten Strike that feels bad about it is before the balls would come out if you didn't hit anything. And then they changed it at some point, so the balls wouldn't come out unless you physically hit something. And that made this skill feel really weird to play in a lot of instances. With the slam, you don't have to worry about that because you'll slam, the balls always come out, and on top of that, it's range, so you can hit stuff from very far away. It's very nice. It's very range skill. On top of that, we don't really know how it scales. The base numbers are a little bit low. The Fissure, the actual slam hit itself, so look at it may hit up to 2 times. It's really hard to tell. There's like the line Fissure, which obviously causes damage, and the actual explosion may also cause damage, and then the balls obviously cause damage on themselves with a less multiplier on the damage. The damage numbers look a little bit low. If you hit every instance of damage, the damage actually isn't too bad, but we need to see how the gyms scale. We've only seen level 1 versions of the gyms, so we don't know if it scales with extra projectiles. We don't know if the less damage multiplier in the projectiles goes up, and we don't know what the, the damage effectiveness and the base damage values are or how they scale. So there's a lot of unknowns there that will really kind of determine how good the skill is. There's also another thing to note, that this skill is coming out with the Vaal version, which is Volcanic Fissure. And what it does, if you haven't seen the video, it's on Twitter, is basically you use it, and it looks a lot like Tectonic Slam, if you can envision that. You use it, it'll crack, it'll explode, and then the balls will come out, and it's like it will cast itself and bounce off that, kind of like a chain. So they showcased it. They used the Vaal skill, it shot out the Fissure, and it shot out the balls, and then it chained to another thing, and it shot out the balls, and then chained to another thing, and shot out the balls. So here's the thing. They said that for single target, this was confirmed on Twitter, because apparently that's where they do most of their Q&A now. For single target, it will only target a monster 1 time. It can only target a monster 1 time. That doesn't mean it can only hit a monster 1 time. They said after that, if you're in a single target scenario where there's nothing else around, it will just go in random directions. So it may potentially still be good for single target. The determining factor of that is how random and how far it really goes, right? Another unknown with the skill is how it scales with AoE. We don't know if it scales with like post-nerf Blade Blast or Cremation or something like that, where increasing AoE will also increase the radius spread of the balls. If it doesn't, then scaling AoE will be very good in a very like guaranteed way to always get full overlap on all the projectiles. If it does increase the radius spread of them, then you'll probably not want to scale AoE at all. So it will change how people build it. Because, if scaling AoE ends up being good, then using Seismic Cry, even though it doesn't innately offer damage, becomes very good and very worth using, which is also a lot of quality of life because you get a ton of AoE for free, right? However, obviously, if it increases the spread of the projectiles, scaling any AoE is kind of dead on arrival, and you want to avoid it at all costs. So, there's a lot of unknowns there that will really determine how good the skill ends up being. Of course, the skill is on the back foot simply because it's an elemental slam, right? Elemental slams weren't even super crazy before they absolutely gutted slams and a lot of like damage supports and melee in general back in 3.15. So yeah, I mean, ever since I didn't even really look at elemental slams because they were so much worse than fizz slams in like Ritual and Expedition. After the great nerf apocalypse of 3.15, I've never even entertained the thought of playing an elemental slam. So it'll be interesting to try to make this work, though it does have some stuff going for it. You have extra scaling with point blank, with projectiles and stuff like that. I've already got a POB made up. It is a chieftain POB, but depending on how the skill scales and the unknowns that I listed previously, Slayer might be a good ascendancy for it. Berserker is always the safe ascendancy because it has so much more damage multi. So you'll see stuff like that coming out. I think what a lot of people are going to do baseline is just make like generic like Berserker slam trees. And I kind of want to do something different. So I made a chieftain tree that kind of leaned into the totem changes and stuff to try to maximize the benefit of that. And I tried to build it differently from how I assumed most people would build it. So, yeah, hopefully it's interesting and hopefully it's cool, but you guys will be able to see that in that video. The next one was, Frozen Legion, which is literally it's a spell which uses an attack, and that attack is sweep. So clever rebranding of game mechanics here. Okay, so I'll be fair, it looks cool, but it is literally just sweep but blue. Let me see if I can actually just pull this up for you guys real quick. Yeah, so this is Frozen Legion. So it looks cool, right? So you summon 6 statues that all use literally sweep. So the level 1, we only see the level 1 versions of the gems, but the level 1 stats are literally identical to normal sweep. So it's very safe to assume that it will scale identical to normal sweep, which makes it pretty easy to POV for actually. There are a lot of unknowns because you summon clones with a spell that use an attack based off your weapon stats and your own stats, but those clones are not you, right? So there's a lot of things that are interesting here. There's a lot of cool stuff you could probably scale with like the same way you scale like totems or mines of like, I'll get into it when I make that video. But there's a lot of really interesting mechanics here. It's also a spell, which means like you kind of want cast speed. It does have a cooldown, so you can kind of see down there at the bottom where it has 6 charges, and when you use it, it uses all the charges, and you summon as many clones as you have charges with it capping at 6, which means you'll probably want some cooldown reduction on the build. It looks more like a supplementary thing, but I want to try to see if I can make it a main skill. A lot of this, again, we don't have the level 20 gems. If the cooldown, like optimally, right? If the cooldown scales with gem level, that would be highly preferable. I don't know if that's a copium take or not, because it's kind of a new thing. Hopefully it gets cooldown reduction with gem level, but we just do not know yet. Hopefully it scales well and everything like that, but it looks really cool. It looks like you can hit really, really hard. It just has like kind of a long recharge. And you scale AoE and stuff enough, you should be able to clear decently well with it, even if you only have a few statues out. I'll go more into this in my actual video for the POB I just finished for this. And then Jungron also has a preliminary video that he did for the skill as well, if you want to check that out while you wait for the other video from me. Anyway, either way, it looks cool. I will say this, like basically every new skill that's coming out, which is just these two plus a few new Vaal skills, all of those will probably be getting build diaries and builds that I'll be doing throughout the league anyway. So if you have something that you're, you know, keen on, don't worry about it. I'll probably get to it at some point during this league and have a video on that. So if I don't mention something before the league, don't worry. I will probably get to it at some point this league. So don't worry about it too much. From there, we do have new Vaal skills. So I have them up on my other monitor here. So we have Vaal Cleave, Vaal Flicker Strike, Vaal Blade Flurry, Vaal Venom Gyre, Vaal Molten Strike, Vaal Caustic Arrow, Vaal Volcanic Fissure, and Vaal Smite. Okay, so we already know what Vaal Cleave is, we already know what Vaal Flicker Strike is, and we already know what Vaal Caustic Arrow is. The others are, as of yet, unknown. And we know what Vaal Volcanic Fissure is, excuse me. I already went over that one, though. So Vaal Cleave is really weird. Because Vaal Cleave, it has a few different buffs up on it. We'll see if we can actually scroll down here and find it. Since this is, I opened up the whole thread that has everything here. That's not it. Volcanic Fissure, this is the new slam skill right here. Okay, so this is Vaal Cleave and Vaal Flicker Strike. So I'll go over these. And I may, oh my god, this is actually, I'm going so much slower than I expected. I'm 13 minutes in. This may have to go into a few different videos because this was just supposed to be a 3.20 impressions video. Okay, so Cleave, Vaal Cleave is basically works like Vaal Reeve. If you know what Vaal Reeve does, you'll hit a few times and it increases your AoE as long as you're hitting things and you keep the buff up. It's very similar to that. Basically, it will make your cleaves huge for a set duration. It'll also, it'll also buff you for a duration, and that buff will give you base culling strike. It'll give you 60% more AoE, right? Which we already knew. And it will give 60% more damage to enemies that are on low life. So only monsters that are below 50% life are going to be getting, you know, that 60% more damage, which is kind of cool, but kind of weird. So there's a lot of really weird things that I feel like are conflicting with this skill. I'm not going to get into the, well, I guess I'll cover it. Also, when you kill a monster with Vaal Cleave up, you yoink its mods. Is that listed here? Am I blind? I don't see it. Am I crazy? Okay, it doesn't look like it's listed in the stats here. It's only listed here. Yeah, so killing blows on rare unique enemies grant a buff that improves cleave, and killing blows on rare enemies also steal their mods for a secondary duration. Okay, so the secondary duration is 20 seconds, so it's a long time to have a mod. So it's like a headhunter at home. It's only rare enemies, not magic enemies, so it's worth noting. And it will steal 1 mod at random. So this is actually, I feel like the reason that they were comfortable putting this in the game is that they just like absolutely stripped down Arch-Nemesis and put a bunch of smaller mods in the game. So there's so many mods you could get with this that would just be complete dead mods. And it lasts for 20 seconds. So you'll have like a decent amount of them for most of the map. It doesn't say that it caps out at 1 like with behead support. So I'm assuming you can just get as many as you can kill. Though do note that rare monsters are less free, or there are not as many of them in a map as there were previously as of the nerfs in 3.19. And now going forward, there's just going to be like generic things like glacial cage, you know, increased fire resistance, takes less damage from, you know, there's going to be a lot of like kind of dead mods when it comes to wanting to steal a mod from something. So I feel like that's the reason they were comfortable putting this in the game, because if you were just able to steal Arch-Nemesis mods, like the entire package that they bring, this would be like crazy for mapping. This would be one of the best mapping builds in the game by far, especially in hardcore, since most of the Arch-Nem mods were very defensive based. However, there's a lot of stuff at odds. This sounds like something that would be cool to play with and be fun. However, at the end of the day, it's still cleave. So the buff grants 60% more cleave damage to enemies that are on low life. So it does, while, you know, single target, when you finally get cleave up, it's 60% more damage when they're below half life. The buff grants Culling Strike with cleave, but it's very interesting because the #1 ascendancy that pops into my brain that you would want to play with this would be Slayer, because it gets impact, you know, it gets tons of AoE. You can really scale stuff up with this. But Slayer already gets really good Culling Strike for free, so why would you need Culling Strike with cleave? Because I feel like Slayer would be like the #1 thing that I would probably want to play this on. You know, unless you decided to go like crit Inquisitor with like, you know, elemental conversions or something on elemental cleave, or something with claws maybe on the right side of the tree. But yeah, that part was really weird to me. Culling Strike, when it's like, well, most people that are probably going to play this on a Slayer because it just has the most synergy, right? But hey, that's, you know, a little bit weird. And then the 60% AoE is really nice, but it's just, I don't know, it's a little bit awkward, especially this type of skill. Like if you go back and you look at footage, there was that guy who played cleave to 100 last league with the +2 radius buff. And if you go back and look at like his damage in maps, it was softcore trade. He was doing one-handed shield, I believe, but he was using like the Savior or Paradoxica or something. I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly, but if you go back and you watch that footage, the damage isn't super good. And like, even if you're hitting more of the screen, it still doesn't look, I don't know. It just, there's all sorts of stuff that just still doesn't, it's still cleave. You know what I mean? Like, it's still cleave. You get some more AoE, you'll get some cull if you're not killing mobs in one hit, but there's no real supplementary clear. If you're going full fizz on this to get as much damage as possible, what are you gonna do? Use Call of Steel? Call of Steel is nerfed because they took out the threshold jewels. So you'd have to use the mastery, which is still okay, but not nearly as good as the jewels were. And you know, if you're using Call of Steel on a lot of stuff, then you're losing that kind of cull, or not the cull, but the more damage to enemies that are below low life for most of clear. There's just a lot of stuff here that feels weird. I think it would also feel weird to like cleave a whole screen and then use Call of Steel, just because the base hit is so low. It feels like it would interact weird, but I could be completely wrong. It might feel super smooth. It's just there's some weird mechanics at odds with each other in this skill to me. And the next one is Vaal Flicker Strike. So my initial reaction was lol, Flicker Strike, like literally nobody cares, and it looked like it would be just a really bad version of itself. So Vaal Flicker Strike, you attack them 25 times, and after a short duration after that, all of the damage from all 25 hits is applied at once in one big hit. So they showcased it for clearing, which just looked awful because it looked like normal Flicker Strike, but with a delay and monsters stayed alive, so it just looked terrible. However, Vaal Flicker Strike actually gives it like insane single target damage. For the simple fact that you can now use this with probably Impale and Bleed. So there were some pretty crazy POBs that people are already making, and it's a little bit memey because it means you have to play Flicker Strike for, you know, the majority of the gameplay. But for single target, you can do bleed, which it does have 70% less damage with ailment, so you have to keep that in mind. So it's not super crazy, right? But you're still getting like super fat bleeds with this. And it will do like 1 mega bleed. Though it is worth noting it's 1 big hit, so you don't go Crimson Dance. You would have to use the really cringe weapon swap with an ensnaring arrow, like with old Earthquake bleed. The other one, which was really cool, I saw people talking about, was doing this but with Impale. And so when you take this with Impaler, basically, you know, all the Impaler memes, you deal a bunch of extra damage. It Impaler basically applies that 1 hit but like 5 times. So basically when you pop Vaal Flicker Strike with it, this would be like a one-shot type thing. Like you want to hit something once really hard, because taking the Impaler node would brick normal Flicker Strike damage on like a single target scenario, because you just wouldn't have damage, because you would have to invest in Impale for this to be good. And like Fizz damage really relies on Impale to have good DPS. So if you did do this, you would get like an insanely high damage hit. Like it would be a very, very high amount of damage if it works as it looks like it's going to. But after that, your damage would be really ass because you wouldn't be able to Impale for a while. And when you could Impale, with Flicker Strike, you attack like 1,000,000 times a second. Impaler would proc, you'd get like a little bit of damage for like literally 0.1 second, and then it would be gone again. So, you know, it sounds really, really cool though. You would absolutely, I imagine, be able to one-shot map bosses with this. How much of a chunk you take out of a pinnacle boss is completely up in the air. I am sure though, in softcore trade, you were absolutely going to see videos coming out of people just one-shotting bosses with this. Because when you go full glass cannon and juice this, you are probably just going to be able to one-shot every boss in the game. Assuming it works how we think it works. So those are the new Vaal skills that we've seen. They showed off Vaal Caustic Arrow as well, which is incredibly underwhelming. Basically the arrow just shoots straight and it leaves a trail behind it. Think like Flame Dash or something. And they clarified that it doesn't stack with normal Caustic Arrow, so it's not like a huge DPS increase. They said the strongest instance of Caustic Ground from Caustic Arrow would prevail just like a normal ailment or something. So, you know, it doesn't stack. It has, like, from the looks of the video, infinite pierce when you use it, so it's got decent clear, but Caustic Arrow already had good clear. It had bad single target. It looks like the damage of Vaal Caustic Arrow is going to be higher than that of normal Caustic Arrow, but it's a little bit weird and underwhelming for a Vaal skill, to be honest. It just looked really, really whatever. It looked really boring. So that's it for the skills. Aside from that, a few of the winners, curses are pretty buffed for the most part. It looks like there's some conflicting information coming out with Hex Blast, though. A lot of people are saying Hex Blast, even with the new numbers, is nerfed to the point where they actually buffed it the same day, which is a little bit worrying, considering Chris sounded very confident when he said that it would be a buff to everything except the very top end. Apparently, it was just a massive nerf all around. I didn't do the math, so I'll just take the word of people who did the math, because apparently it was convincing enough to make GGG change it the day of. Arch-Nem. So I'm not really convinced on the Arch-Nem stuff. Something I almost made a video about was with the Arch-Nem manifesto. They said that since they are removing Arch-Nem mods and watering down the pool significantly, they are going to be rebalancing all the mods. And they're going to have, like, I think somewhere between 2 to 4 mods per monster. So realistically, if they buff the mods a lot, which it's GGG, they're prone to do with how much they've been fighting us back on Arch-Nem, and they said they're going to be rebalancing them. It's not like, oh, Arch-Nem is dead, we're going back to how the game used to be. It's like, Arch-Nem is still in the game, just the combinations are going to be randomized now and a little bit weaker. But I think a lot of people are probably going to be a little bit surprised and probably disappointed with how the game will probably end up playing. I think I don't think Arch-Nem is dead, right? I think it is just, like I originally predicted when they very first put this in the game, it's just more watered down. And will probably still lead to some scenarios where it is just really annoying to interact with, but they just make it less and less frequent with every patch until they randomly buff it again. Going on from there, there were a lot of nerfs, to be honest. There were a lot of nerfs to a lot of stuff. And a lot of them I didn't really agree with. The removal of unique jewels and stuff like that, I think is kind of silly. Sorry, I'll let this start playing again. The removal of unique gems, saying that like, oh, there's nothing we could really do to them without completely redesigning them, which would take away from their identity. We'll just make something new in the future. Was kind of weird because there was a lot of them where it's like, no, you could literally just buff the numbers on this and then it would be good. Like so many situations. So that seemed, it just felt lazy. In my honest opinion, a lot of those excuses kind of just felt like excuses. It felt like we don't have the time or the will to do this, so we're just gonna remove it, which is a shame, especially because some of the jewels they got added like as recently as 3.17. Like I saw a post on Reddit, like the threshold jewel that like made melee attacks do way more ignite damage for like niche builds like that. They literally just put that in the game and now they're taking it right back out again, deleted it, like not moved into some other area. It's gone. So it's really interesting. But the curse buffs are pretty good all around, very interesting. Massive buffs to Seismic Trap, as I'm sure you guys have probably seen that Jung Roan video already. It was on the front page of Reddit. Stuff like that. I think the buff to unique weapons is a real head scratcher. When they did this during the reveal, I was like flabbergasted. They buff a weapon by like 20 or 30%, which was already way worse than other weapons that you can just craft yourself. And then they make it as rare as Mage Blood. Like they were good. They were a lot better, but they're nowhere near Mage Blood tier. That made literally no sense. Like Starforge. It was also kind of funny to me how Chris said, we're not going to, it's not like we randomly nerf stuff because we hate minion players and we decide to nerf stuff just to make minion players hate themselves or whatever he said. It was something along those lines. And then it was like, but that's literally what they did last league by like making all the minions just die on sight. And then directly after that, they said that they were making King Taker, or Soul Taker a like Mage Blood rarity, which is a like core item that you need for minion builds because it makes Kingmaker, which is like their #1 staple item they use on Animate Guardian for damage and survivability. It's huge. It's actually a massive nerf to minion builds. So it's really funny that he said that, and then they massively nerfed minion builds. So if you're playing SSF, you're giga nerfed, and if you're playing Trade League, unless you're a player who can normally afford Mage Blood tier items, then you are also significantly nerfed if you like playing minion builds. RIP, I guess. So that was pretty funny. Strike skills somehow got nerfed. I saw this. Okay, so this bothered me a lot. There were a lot of people saying, oh, you guys don't understand. It saved us a support gem now that we get melee splash for free on the tree. It's like, no, it doesn't. Okay, you will deal more damage while mapping because you don't have to use melee splash while mapping if you're playing a really bad, strike skill that needs splash, like dual strike or something. But, huge but, anytime you're playing single target, anytime you're doing bossing, anytime you need that damage, you would already gym swap anyway. It was a very minor quality of life of saving you a gym swap from going from mapping to bossing. And this had no effect on people who were doing this gym swap, which should have been everybody. If you were bossing with melee splash, which bricks your damage, then you kind of deserve to deal no damage. I don't know, to be honest. So this is really weird. I see a lot of people like, you guys don't understand. It's like a 30% damage buff because you don't have to use melee splash anymore. It's like, yes, for mapping. But if you're like walking into a Cirrus fight or a Maven fight with melee splash in your links, you're kind of self-griefing anyway. So it's not a buff at all. It's actually a massive nerf for any of those situations because you lost the node, the mastery, which was 30% increase range on your strikes, which is huge. A lot of people talk all the time. The issue with melee is like standing still and uptime and stuff like that. That mastery gave you way more uptime on bosses. And now it's gone. Now it's going to feel worse for map clearing and stuff like that. And it's going to feel way worse for bossing. So really interesting that they did that. It's gonna be felt twice as much on hardcore for obvious reasons. Inquisitor got nerfed, Pious Path losing its 50% increase effect of Consecrated Ground. So if you guys are curious what this was before, so Consecrated Ground baseline is 5% life regen per second. With the 50% increase effect, I don't know this for sure. I'm assuming there's no diminishing returns or whatever. I think it is just a flat 50% increase. So it would go from 5% to 7.5% life regen per second. So that will be gone. So you're going from 7.5% per second down to 5% per second. It is like a 30% nerf in your baseline regen. But if you're rolling like flat regen and stuff like that on your gear, you should be all right. It's a little bit less regen, but Inquisitor is dead by no means. Now, the very interesting thing with this patch was Spectral Helix and Lightning Conduit got gutted. They got absolutely destroyed. To put this into context, Spectral Helix now has 100% effectiveness of added damage at gym level 1, previously 160%. So you were losing like a lot of damage. You are losing like 30+% damage at gym level 1, up to 150% at gym level 20, previously 250%. So to put this into perspective, in 3.20, a level 20 Spectral Helix will do less damage than a level 1 Spectral Helix in previous patches. This skill got destroyed. I don't think anyone's going to be playing Spectral Helix going forward. Those numbers are abysmal. It is quite weak now. Lightning Conduit also got massively nerfed. You may still see some people playing this. I don't think it's in the realm of literally dead as Spectral Helix, but it got very sizable damage nerfs as well. But it already did a ton of damage. You could probably still play this. I don't think it's like brain dead, kill everything in a few hits like it was, but it will probably still be playable, I would imagine. Lightning Strike also got like a not huge nerfs to the skill itself, but they kind of destroyed like elusiveness in a way, because you can't use Withering Step during elusive anymore, so you have to wait for the buff to fully wear off. Honestly, in a lot of ways, not as big of a nerf as I was expecting. And Lightning Strike itself, they just made it so it shoots out less projectiles and it doesn't double dip on quality anymore, which is my biggest qualm with the skill, was that it got projectile speed and damage with quality. Now it will only get projectile speed. Also, it went from basically they took a lot of extra projectiles that it fired away from it, so now you're going to need to get the lab enchant to get those extra projectiles. Probably the lab enchant's probably going to feel necessary to play it. But the biggest nerf in terms of its, like, that's really it. They didn't really nerf its damage at all. That nerf came from the elusive nerfs, which will probably affect its damage quite a bit. I imagine it's still playable, but its map clear is not going to be anywhere near as good as it was, and its damage is definitely going to take a hit from not being able to constantly have as much uptime on max elusiveness as previously. But we'll see. It'll still be, I imagine it was so broken with Omni and stuff. I imagine it'll still have good damage. You'll still probably see some people playing it. Tainted Orbs of Fusing are back. That's 50%, 50% chance to link or not link. They said reverted to Scourge levels, which people said was 50%. It was a 50% chance in Scourge. So Tainted Orb of Fusing are actually good again. One of the coolest things from this patch, I'll drag this over on this monitor here. The coolest things from this patch is a Fracturing Orb added from Harbingers. So one of my big qualms was that I did a lot of Harby farming in SSF before 3.19, because that was the way that you would consistently farm Exalts in SSF, especially if you didn't do a lot of heists. Because of the shard mechanic and you know, juicing the Atlas tree for Harbingers, I was able to farm 10+X a day, you know, on really long stream days, for doing metamod crafting and stuff like that. So the fact that they're adding Fracturing Orbs in the game and adding shards for them means that for SSF, there's a way where we can very consistently farm these, which is a big deal. Because basically they're taking the Fracture Craft out of Harvest, which honestly I think is good because it was so expensive that I had no desire to actually farm it. And they're adding Fracturing Orbs, which does exactly as you would think. It does exactly what the Harvest Craft is. Basically, on an item with 4 or more mods, it will fracture one of them, and that's all it does. So I'm not sure if you can just keep fracturing stuff on the same item. If you can, this is almost like a introduction of recombinators in a way more RNG form. But basically the point is baseline Fracturing Orbs are going to be huge for making crafting feel more good again. especially in SSF. I think that's a really big change. Kuwu died to get Sirius's arena changed, so it has its barriers on the outside of the arena more clearly defined. But basically, there's a lot of good changes here. The league mechanic itself looks pretty cool. Overall, it looks okay. The base stuff for the game looks cool. I feel like this has been a very recurring thought I've had for a while now, with some hiccups, like 3.19 being a very big hiccup, obviously. But for the most part, the way of the game lately has been like, there's some cool changes to the game, but there's no balance changes. And it's driving not just me, but the entire community crazy. Depending on who you ask and depending on what you really consider a shakeup, a meta shakeup, or a balance change, we're going on like 1.5 to nearing 2 years at the end of this league of no substantial balance changes, which is just mind numbing. It really screams to, you know, to me that like we are on full maintenance mode. They don't care. And anything that they could add or could do to PoE 1, they can just put in PoE 2 and increase the selling power and enjoyability of PoE 2, right? Maybe a very pessimistic take, but I honestly think at this point, a very realistic take, just given how much the community has screamed for some of these things for well over a year at this point, and how it has actually very visibly affected retention rates and player numbers consistently, and they just don't seem to care. So I can only assume that that is kind of their logic at this point. Let's just work really hard on PoE 2. Anything that we could add to PoE 1, let's just put it in PoE 2 instead. We'll drip feed whatever we can to like just try to squelch some complaining and just try to make PoE 2 as good as possible and get it out the door, you know, in a finished state as quickly as we can. That to me just is what this is kind of screaming at this point, from their complete like just hard-headedness to just give us some number changes on some gyms. But yeah, that's the number one thing. If you go on Reddit, you'll see like 90% of the front page is like, okay, cool, but like no balance changes. Are you freaking kidding me? And it's like true, honestly true. Like it's ridiculous. I agree that it's just kind of sad, man. It really kills. Like there's the new elite mechanic looks really cool. A lot of the changes look cool. They're making changes to the Atlas tree to even juice further. All these changes sound awesome. But the number one thing that you like, step one, right, of interacting with the game is your build. It doesn't matter if step 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are more enjoyable if step 1 still isn't, if step 1 is still stale, you know what I mean? And that's just the number one thing that kills a lot of hype for a lot of people, including me. However, just like with last league, I got a buff to Sunder, and that was enough to like hype me up to play Sunder and really like spend some time theory crafting and trying to min-max that build. I had some fun for a while it lasted. At least this league, I got 2 new skills. Even if they end up may not be super good, I'll have 2 new skills to play with, try to min-max. They have some interesting mechanics we haven't seen before, so that'll be fun. And then we have new Vaal skills to work with, so there's still some cool stuff to do there. I probably won't mess with all of them, but I will definitely be messing with some of them. And then from there, you know, we'll see. And then there's Ruthless. See, Ruthless is another thing. I don't have any issues with Ruthless in concept. I even think Ruthless would be really fun, like in theory, right? Like the campaign becomes a lot harder, stuff like that. Like it really just changes the scope of the game. It's almost like playing a completely different, it's like playing a completely different game. But I thought about getting into the alpha or the beta or whatever it is. And then it was like, but what build would I play? And as soon as I asked myself that question, I just didn't want to play anymore. Cause like, I want to play the same shit as before. I'm going to play the super meta stuff cause it's Ruthless, except, you know, if I'm going to clear the game, you know, if I'm going to kill Act 10 Katava on a 2-link, I'm going to do that with Spectral Helix. I'm not going to do that with Double Strike. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like no balance changes kills Ruthless for me as well. Whereas otherwise it would be something I'd be really excited to play. But yeah, that's kind of my feelings overall on the patch. A lot of cool changes overall. Surprisingly, a lot of nerfs, honestly. But the biggest thing that I have an issue with is just the lack of balance changes. I really just wish they would just blanket buff things. Like the adding Vaal skills is cool. Vaal Cleave and stuff like that is cool, but they didn't buff Cleave to begin with. So like while mapping, it's going to feel a lot more fun while you're mapping, but then you get to the map boss or then you get to a pinnacle boss and it's like, shit, dude, I'm playing fucking Cleave, you know, like, and it's, yeah, I don't know. It's bizarre to me, But yeah, I think that's going to do it for me. I have other videos to go record, so keep an eye out for those. I'm probably not going to upload them all in one day because that would be pretty stupid, because I would piss the algorithm off and it would flag me for video spam. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. How did you receive the 3.20 reveal? Are you excited? What are you excited for? Are you going to be playing? Are you just going to stick to playing Dragonflight? Because let's be real, there's probably going to be a decent amount of people who just play Dragonflight instead. But yeah, just let me know. What are you guys excited for? What are you not excited for? What are you concerned about? Etc, etc. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you a bunch. If you liked the video, please leave me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, feel free to leave me a thumbs down. Tell me what you think I could do better. As always, everything was timestamped throughout the video. Hopefully I didn't forget to do that. I never do. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Friendly reminder that you can sub to me here on YouTube if you enjoyed the content. You can follow me over on Twitch to be notified when I go live. I'll be streaming POB sessions over the coming days before the league comes out and helping viewers with their POBs, as well as streaming a bunch, pushing the HSF ladder on League Start, probably with one of the new skills. And then finally, you can join my Discord. The link will be down below. I offer build help, POB help, all sorts of stuff in my Discord for free all the time in there. Or if you just like want to hang out with other people in my community, that's cool too. And my Twitter. I don't tweet a whole lot. A lot of it's just memes, to be honest, that I retweet. But as my Twitter grows, I will tweet more thoughts I have. But with the small amount of followers I have right now, it kind of just feels like screaming into the void with no one listening, which just seems kind of cringe to me, to be honest. So once I get more Twitter followers, I'll use it more for like voicing opinions and stuff that I don't really feel warrant a video by themselves, and just important stuff I think pertain to PoE and whatnot. Anyway, gonna end the video here. Another long one, but what more can you expect from me at this point, honestly? Appreciate you guys a bunch, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.